The market is that place where buyers and sellers exchange goods and services based on desires. If allowed to move freely, the price rests at equilibrium. So how do the markets work? Well, there are three models, and one of them doesn't exist. The next three chapters are going to cover in depth each of the next three models: perfect competition, monopoly, and oligopoly. I like the simplicity of the comparison chart from the book. Pause the video right now, take a look at it, and then we'll get back to it. With perfect competition, there are a large number of buyers and sellers. Market entry and exit is easy. Product is homogeneous. Information is free. So let's break all of these down. Many buyers and sellers. Both consumers and producers have the ability to make their economic choices absent the consideration that one is the only supplier of a good or that consumers of a service are limited in number. Because there are so many sellers, no one company can impact supply or price of a product. Each would sell the amount of product at the equilibrium price, and everyone would work together to follow the demand. Easy entry and exit. If there's a reason someone cannot enter a market or leave, those are barriers. A barrier to your entering the donut market would be that you don't have the resources to facilitate such a move. You have no time, no money, no supplies, no rainbow sprinkles. All of those are barriers. Without barriers, you could move from producing guns to producing butter with no cost for the conversion. It'd be easy as, well, as donuts. You would also have no loss in efficiency. For instance, a barrier to leaving the market would be the amount invested in a company, the sunk costs. If it's going to cost me a bunch of money to change from making donuts to making cupcakes, I am going to keep making donuts. But if all it takes is a thrown switch in the master control panel and now I'm making cupcakes, then there are no barriers to me leaving the donut market and entering the cupcake market. Homogeneous product. The product each seller sells is identical. There are no variations in the quality or manufacture of the good. Everything is the same. My donuts and Tim Horton donuts are not homogeneous because they are brand names. Veggies are homogeneous. Car brands are not homogeneous. Free information. With all of the buyers and sellers buying and selling, everybody needs to know what's going on. Buyers need to know what's going on so they can buy the best goods and services at the best price. Sellers need to know the current trends so they know which markets to get into and out of. So everyone knows everything and nobody has an advantage. There's the concept of a price taker that is unique to perfect competition. A price taker is one that is constrained to follow the price that is set by the marketplace following equilibrium set by the invisible hand. With this obedience to the set price, they can sell all that they produce at that price. But if they raise their price 1 penny, nobody's going to buy it because they can get it less somewhere else. The price taker is very different from a price maker or a price setter. The price setter is one who sets the price that everybody else has to follow and hopes that they can sell it all. A little more on profits. In the last section, we talked about accounting profits and economic profits. Profits take account the costs and compare them to the returns. But within the market, there is a fourth type of profit. Well, that's not right. There. Within the market, there's a fourth type of profit to be made, the normal profit. Normal profit would be the difference between cost and income equal to what would have been made if the money were invested somewhere else. Consider this the opportunity cost of business, the difference in profit from the next best option. Now, within normal profits, the concept of cost has to be divided even further, and we talked about these a little bit. First is fixed costs. These are the costs the company has to bear that are not going to change over the short run. Interest on loans, minimum wage, those are all fixed costs. You know that the rent on your building is going to be the same every month for that year. The variable costs are costs that change over a short period of time. Materials prices, replacement costs, rainbow sprinkles, but you already knew this. In perfect competition, as the amount of profit is the same universally, as is the price of goods and services. There are no excess profits. All expenses are covered. There is nothing left over. But within the market, there is a point at which the firm stops losing money and starts making money, as well as a point where the firm maximizes profits. I have a natural bias against these big honkin' tables like this. This one's on 118, and it just looks too much like math. Page 119 has a really good chart that illustrates short-run profits and maximization. The straight line is the demand curve in perfect competition. So, this line shows that at 9 units of output, the marginal average total cost drops below the demand price. In the bottom chart, it's where X marks the spot. The firm is finally making things for less than they're constrained to sell them for as the price taker. So if you make something for less than it costs to sell it, you're making a profit. At 19 units, the dotted line, the firm has on the top maximized their profits. The marginal average total cost is at its most inexpensive. Now you're going to notice the ATC curve starts heading up after 19 units. Follow this curve out and you'll see that it'll continue to get closer to the demand curve, and it may even cross it again, resulting in a loss. As the price taker, the firm has absolutely no control over where the equilibrium price will be set by the invisible hand. But every so often, bad things happen, and the price drops below what the firm can manufacture the goods or services for. This, in the highly scientific jargon of the economics profession, sucks. In a perfect world, the best way to minimize losses is to not produce at all. That way losses are zero. We can take a little economic siesta until the market gets back to behaving itself. But remember that there are fixed and variable costs. The fixed cost, rent, insurance, water, power, pile up regardless of whether production happens or not. So what we need to do is we need to minimize the loss rather than shut down completely. At a certain point, there's just going to be enough revenue to cover the variable costs, but not cover the fixed costs. And this is kind of where we are gaining by not losing as much. Another way to minimize losses is to find the point where it makes the best economic sense not to produce anymore. By figuring out where marginal cost exceeds marginal revenue, we know how many units of production to make at a minimum. After which, if the price goes any lower, we just shut everything down and wait for things to get better. This chart on 124 is a good graphic representation of the marginal cost benefit analysis a firm has to make. The dotted lines at 3, 4, and 500 are the flat supply curves of perfect competition. We already know that curves can change based on a number of factors, so we have to assume, ceteris paribus, the firm will adjust output based on profit. The firm prefers to make as much profit as it can, and it does this by producing at the lowest marginal cost and selling at the highest marginal price. As the supply curve moves down, the concept of wiggle room comes into play. The firm is still making money by selling for more than the product costs to a point. E1, E2, and E3. But once that point is crossed, once you get to E4, the firm has to minimize losses in one of several ways that we discussed. One thing we remember is there are no barriers to entry or exit of markets, just as there is perfect information about trends. Firms can enter and exit the market at will, and this helps the invisible hand find equilibrium. But there are market fluctuations. When the invisible hand moves the price down, firms will react. Now, we've been talking about individual firms at this point. Now we're going to look at behavior of the industry as a whole. When price falls, revenue falls, profit takes a hit. Some firms cut back on production, some will have to minimize loss, others will have to produce until shutdown, and some will leave the market altogether. You've seen this during the economic crisis of the 2020 pandemic. We know that when there's a change in supply, there's going to be a change in price. Temporarily changing the price will cause, in perfect competition, some firms to leave or enter the market, lower or raise supply, and bring the price back up to where it's supposed to be. It is possible for long-run supply curves to remain flat or even angle upwards, and in the case of non-flat curves, all of what we learned about elasticity and price dynamics holds true as well. Consumer and producer surplus. Simply put, consumer surplus is a measure comparing what a person would have paid over what they actually paid. Lee would have bought apples, 9 of them at 45 cents, 10 of them at 40 cents. You see that on the chart on page 134. The producer surplus is a measure comparing what the firm sold the act actually sold for to what it would have sold it for. The farmer's market vendor would have sold some apples for less than the 40 cents paid. This is the chart on page 135. But in either case, Hannah needs to lay off the apples and add more vegetables to her diet. By looking at supply issues, these models help us answer 2 of the 4 economic questions: what and how. Perfect competition, the book says, is an economist's dream. But it's only that. It's only a dream. It doesn't really exist in real life. And please remember that this is economics, so don't look for anything approaching logic.